I'm joined now from our Lagos studios by Dr. Sally Mbanefo, former Director General of the Nigerian Tourism Development Corporation, currently Commissioner for Diaspora Affairs, Indigenous Artworks, Culture and Tourism in Anambra State in Nigeria. She is, of course, the former Director General of the Nigerian Tourism Development Corporation. She's known and recognized as a major force in Nigeria's attempt to raise the standard of its virtually non-existent tourism industry. Her time in that office was seen as a pivotal moment, and we're hoping that she can tell us why it seems, extremely difficult to get a country like Nigeria up with its tourism and get the rest of the world to appreciate the enormous bounty that was given to this country by nature. You can crisscross this country, and I certainly have. I mean, I've been in places like Cross River State, I've been in Lagos, I've been in, I've actually driven all the way from where President Buhari comes from, in Daura in the north, the far north, all the way down to Calabar in the far south, stopping in virtually every major city, including places like Daura, Katsina, Kano, Abuja, of course, Lokoja, which was Nigeria's first capital, and then moving from there on to places like Benin, which is a huge cultural and historical center, then going to places like Ife, in the southwest, which is believed to be the home of the Yorubas, and then from there on to places like Warri, which is an oil capital in the Niger Delta, then going to Bayelsa State, Yenagoa, places like that. Absolutely incredible beaches in those places, and then going on from there to Port Harcourt, which is, or at least used to be known as the Garden City. I'm not quite sure it's quite so gardeny these days. And then from there on to Owerri, which is again another big sort of historical and cultural center. It's in the southeast. And finally ending up in Calabar, which I believe is considered the jewel of Nigeria's tourism industry, Nigeria's tourism, really, because I mean it is one state that did so much to develop its tourism industry. It went from being an oil producing state. I mean, all states in the Niger Delta are oil producing except Cross River State. And when its oil wells were taken away, the governor at the time, who was exceedingly dynamic, decided that the people had to do something and turn around their capacity away from oil and towards tourism. And the result was absolutely incredible. I mean, if you were in Calabar between, I suppose, 1999 and possibly 2015 or so, I mean, the incredible work that went into developing tourism from nothing was just absolutely amazing. And one of the people who helped to do all that and to inspire the people there was the woman that we're waiting to talk to, and who we can't seem to get on, get the sound sorted so she can hear me from our Lagos studios, hence this never-ending monologue from me. But nevertheless, I enjoy your company and talking with you. And as I said, Calabar and Cross River State developed into this amazing tourist center. You had the Calabar Carnival, which is, and then you had the Calabar Street Party and so on, that became enormous. And I understand that Sally can hear me now. Can you hear me, Sally?
Yes, I can hear you.
Right. A little bit about your story and how you came to be the Director General of the Nigerian Tourism Development Corporation.
Okay. How I came to be, yes. What is the question?
Well, the question is, how did you come to be the Director General of the Nigerian Tourism Development Corporation?
I was appointed by the government. I was a banker I was a top banker, an executive director in the banking industry. And I was invited to serve my country. And I accepted it. Even though I was going from known to unknown.
Well, I'm hoping to make this considerably more conversational and less sort of stodgy, because I would imagine that with your personality as a tourism person, you would have been someone who was there to inspire people, and we're hoping to capture some of that mood in this interview. So I want to get a little bit of background on what your story actually is. But what we're going to do, Sally, to give you time to settle in, is that we're going to take a break. And when we come back, then we'll delve more into the interview proper. Apologies once again for the late start. It should have been there from the outset. But we're talking to Dr. Sally Mbanefo there. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our chat with the former Director General of the Nigerian Tourism Development Corporation. Or perhaps I should say, as we begin our chat with her. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview, where we speak to the newsmakers as well as ordinary people doing extraordinary things around the world and featuring the voices at the heart of the stories. I'm Charles Aniagolu. Now, you might have heard of the term staycations as opposed to vacations. It's a term that's applied to people who spend their holidays in their home countries rather than abroad. Well, one of the people responsible for helping to convince many Nigerians to spend their vacations in Nigeria rather than booking a ticket to Dubai or Europe is Dr. Sally Mbanefo. As Director General of the Nigerian Tourism Development Corporation, she toured the country trying to convince Nigerians that domestic tourism has the potential to give them the equivalent holiday experience of going abroad. And to some extent it worked, with tens of thousands discovering getaway locations in places like Calabar in Cross River State and Lagos in southwest Nigeria. Well, in a moment we'll speak some more with Dr. Sally Mbanefo, who's in our Lagos studios. But first, here's some more of the sort of advertising material that emerged during her time in office, trying to sell Nigeria as a tourism destination to Nigerians.
Located on the western shores of Africa, Nigeria is a welcoming country which promises a fascinating experience for everyone. Welcome to Abuja, the capital of the country. Here you will discover Nigeria's religious and cultural diversity, while enjoying the many international hotels offering first-rate hospitality and top-of-the-class business facilities. Step into the exciting city of Lagos, a place where tradition and modernity come together. Considered Africa's own Big Apple, the city is home to luxurious hotels and some of the best shops and restaurants in the country. Enjoy the unique nightlife and thriving music scene of one of the most vibrant cities on earth. Rediscover relaxation in Nigeria's southern state of Akwa Ibom. Enjoy the finest hospitality at Le Méridien Hotel and Golf Resort, where the lush greens of the world-class 18-hole golf course and its unique location in the middle of the jungle will ensure a lifetime of memories. Discover the beautiful city of Calabar, capital of the Cross River State, a lovely and peaceful place located on the southeast coast. Immerse yourself in the local traditions and get in touch with Nigeria's rich cultural history through the many festivals around the country. Take a trip through the mountain forest, where the Obudu Mountain Resort plays host to luxury travelers and some of the most important conventions in Africa. And pay a visit to the Alfi Mountain Wildlife Reserve, a rainforest sanctuary where you can see some of the most endangered species alive. A country with 170 million people. Africa's biggest market. Extraordinary, fascinating Nigeria.
Well, let's attempt to speak some more now to the former Director General of the Nigerian Tourism Development Corporation, Dr. Sally Mbanefo. I hope you can hear me now, Sally.
I can hear you very well.
Let's make a valiant attempt to do this again, and apologies. We were talking about how you came to be the Director General of the Nigerian Tourism Corporation. I was hoping that you'd give me some background where you came from and how you got to be that.
Well, I'd been in banking for over 21 years, and I was an executive director of a commercial bank. We were put there by the Central Bank of Nigeria to restructure a bank that they had taken over. And so while that was going on, I got a call inviting me to come to serve as the Director General for Tourism. Initially, I turned it down because I was a core banker and I never really thought about tourism. But eventually, I took the offer, left my comfort zone to take the job in Abuja.
And I suppose that the logical question must be, how was it? I mean, because, you know, did you do the things you set out to do? Did you have a plan about what to do about tourism in this country?
Yes, I think the first thing that we did was I had three strategic imperatives. One was to rebuild the NTDC, the organization that I was given to run and to manage. People change, culture change, mindset change. And prior to my getting the job, no one really talked about domestic tourism. And so that was the project that I came with, and the mindset to make Nigerians and non-Nigerians we had to collaborate with the expatriate community. And they loved the fact that I came from the private sector, so we worked also in collaboration with the private sector. That was a success story, the fact that we could collaborate with other people and then created awareness. Nigeria has so many beautiful things to show, but people don't know. And so what we find is that people were surprised when I began to travel. I came strictly from banking. I'd spent over 20 years in banking, 3 years in oil and gas. I was a director in Coca-Cola. I was a director in Lafarge Cement. It's now called Lafarge Africa. And from that purely private sector background, I had this challenge to turn tourism around, and that was the challenge that I had. But the success story is that collaboration with everyone that was necessary in the value chain was put in place, and then creating awareness. And to do this, you can't create awareness about something you don't know anything about. And so I began to travel around the whole of Nigeria, and Nigeria is so beautiful. I never realized how beautiful Nigeria was until I began to travel. I went to the north, to the south, to the east, to the west. I went everywhere. I was on boat rides. I met all the tourism commissioners. I met all the chairmen of the local government communities. These were the things that helped us to see the beauty and to see that tourism is the next frontier. Oil is there, but tourism is the next oil.
Ask you this, Sally, because I mean, you have said that you had really no knowledge about tourism before you became the Director General. I mean, do you think, did that inform your reluctance to accept the job? And do you think that perhaps someone who is more conversant with the tourism industry should have been appointed rather than yourself? Because I mean, you then spent your first few, I don't know, months or year or whatever, having to get to grips with an industry that you really knew nothing about.
Well, the thing is, at our level, at the level at which I had attained professionally, you're a manager. It wouldn't really matter the field you're put in. I took it with enthusiasm. I was excited about the job, and it was an opportunity for me to get out of my shell and discover Nigeria. And really, I took it with a breath of fresh air, and people were very excited about the approach that I took. And the wave of change and awareness that I created, every governor was very excited about my visit to their state because they had to show me their tourism assets. I went around trying to authenticate the tourism assets that we had. And it was just incredible how beautiful Nigeria is. Nigeria is beautiful, still is beautiful, and the story of Nigeria is full of hope. We just have to keep being positive and to celebrate the beautiful things we have. We have so many things to celebrate in Nigeria, and tourism is just one of them. We just need the mindset of people to think about Nigeria, think about tourism, think about enjoying Nigeria and enjoying the assets that we have before going out. For example, we have a lot of festivals. I invited a lot of the embassies. We worked in a lot of collaboration with the foreign embassies. We signed memorandum of understanding for best practices, sharing of best practices for training, for exchange programs, so many things. We have the Mexican society. They all came from Mexico. A lot of businessmen. We worked with the Ministry of Trade and Investment to showcase what Nigeria has. And the mindset that I took was giving it a business perspective. Tourism became an asset that people can invest in. And that was how it excited the expatriate community. And each time we had festivals in Calabar, for example, a whole troop of them would come with us and would travel to Calabar for the carnival, or travel to the east for their festivals, or travel to Kaduna. We went all over Nigeria because each feast or each festival or each cultural event, I was invited, and we really enjoyed interacting with different parts of people, different people in the different parts of Nigeria.
Yeah, well, I was hoping that we would be able to see some pictures whilst you were talking about all that, because obviously you were traveling around the country, and we do have some shots of you making those trips. But I mean, it seems, what I don't understand is, I mean, in spite of all that effort, in spite of everything that you said you did, I mean, there doesn't appear to be a cohesive tourism industry in Nigeria. I mean, would you say that, I mean, in spite of the fact that you gained a big following for your policies and your ideas, that things like infrastructure or the lack of it were a big drawback? Because, I mean, it's one thing to tell people to go to a New Yam festival or a Durbar or something somewhere. It's quite another for them to be able to find salubrious surroundings where they can stay to enjoy that Durbar.
Yes, infrastructure is a general challenge, but I believe the government is working very hard to provide an enabling environment. What is also very important is the fact that the president has empowered the local communities. And so the local communities are empowered to provide as much infrastructure as they can within their local communities. And this is what has helped tourism to strive in each of the states. The states are all doing quite well. You really need to make a trip around Nigeria to see all the beautiful things that the states have made in tremendous effort to promote the culture and all the assets that they have as tourism assets. I mean, that's what I'd say, that the states
there, Sally,
have become very independent.
Unfortunately, we're going to take a break. We have to take a break, but we'll come back to talk some more to you. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our assessment of the Nigerian tourism industry with the former Director General of the Nigerian Tourism and Development Corporation, Dr. Sally Mbanefo. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview, where we speak to the newsmakers as well as ordinary people doing extraordinary things around the world and featuring the voices at the heart of the stories. I'm Charles Anyagolu, and throughout the program I have with me Dr. Sally Mbanefo, former Director General of the Nigerian Tourism Development Corporation, currently Commissioner for Diaspora Affairs, Indigenous Artworks, Culture and Tourism in Anambra State, in Nigeria. She was known and recognized as a major force in Nigeria's attempt to raise the standard of its virtually non-existent tourism industry. Her time in that national office was seen as a pivotal moment during which there were considerable attempts at reforming the tourism industry and to develop tourist infrastructure, improve service delivery, and strengthen security and safety. It was under her watch that the visa on arrival was introduced. Well, now she's taken those talents to Anambra State, attempting to raise the state's travel and tourism potential. In a moment, we'll be chatting some more with Dr. Sally Mbanefo. But first, here she is introducing Anambra State to the world in this video snippet.
My name is Sally Mbanefo, and I am the Honorable Commissioner for Diaspora Affairs, Indigenous Artwork, Culture and Tourism. On behalf of the hard-working Governor of Anambra State, Chief Willie Obiano, I wish us all a happy World Tourism Day 2018. The theme for this year's World Tourism Day celebration is Tourism for Digital Transformation. There is a link between the theme for this year's World Tourism Day and what we're doing at the ministry. You can take a virtual tour of our tourism sites at community.anambradiaspora.com.ng. I'm inviting you, come to Anambra and experience the magic of Anambra State and our beautiful tourism sites. Some of these sites are Owerri Zukala, Ogbunike Cave, and Igboukwu Museum. Our other sites are Zix Mausoleum Museum in Onitsha. We also have the Obi of Onitsha's Museum. It's amazing. You must come. We have even a beautiful lake called Agulu Crocodile Lake. So many amazing things. Please come to Anambra and see for yourself. As you're coming to Anambra State, I'd like to let you know that Anambra is one of the safest states in Nigeria. And of course, we have incredibly beautiful hotels, hospitable, clean, and safe again. On behalf of His Excellency, Chief Willie Obiano, the Ministry of Diaspora Affairs, Indigenous Artwork, Culture and Tourism, and the hospitable and warm people of Anambra, we invite you to come discover Anambra Paradise. See you then.
That's Dr. Sally Mbanefo. They're plugging her state and the new job that she has overseeing tourism and culture in Anambra State. She is, of course, the former Director General of the Nigerian Tourism and Development Corporation, and she's with me from our Lagos studios. Thank you very much indeed for staying with us. We'll talk a little bit about what you're doing in Anambra State, but let's talk first of all about the place that you have come from. Your uncle was the famous Ambassador Ralph Uwechue, in whose household you spent a lot of formative years in London. Tell us about that and how that period helped to, as it were, change your perspective in life.
Thank you very much. Ambassador Ralph Uwechue is my father's elder brother and was the head of the family until a few years ago when he died. But what the family really stands for is integrity. And so you find that in everything that we do as Uwechues, integrity is key to everything that we do. You can have all the money in the world, but if your name is stained and you can't feel good about yourself. Integrity is very, very important, and that has been the key word and my watchword in everything that I've done. It's helped me a lot in my banking career. It's helped me when I was in manufacturing. It helped me even much more in Abuja when I was faced with challenges like corruption and things like that, that you had to deal with, that one had to deal with. And so being an Uwechue has been an asset because it's made us have a long vision of the big picture. Essentially gives us a very good background.
Right, and I mean, talking about corruption, I mean, there were very, very frustrating moments for you, weren't there? I mean, because there was a time, I mean, you had to battle a lot of detractors in the course of your work as Director General, and eventually ended up before the anti-corruption agency, the EFCC.
The thing is, it's very exciting now to thinking about it. But what happens is somebody will demand for some money from you, and if you don't deliver the amount, they'll write a petition about this high. They'll send it to all the agencies, not just EFCC, anybody who's willing to prosecute. And so that's what I was faced with. But as long as one keeps one's hands clean, you're always free, you're cleared. And, but it was a rough time because people would make demands of you. And if you didn't feel that it was right, they would try to blackmail you using the press. And it's very interesting because even when my tenure finished and it ended and I left, it put it in the press, oh, I was sacked. But the truth is I finished my tenure. So these were things, it's part of the learning curves, I suppose, of baptism of fire. That's what I called it, because I came from a very strict and disciplined environment. Banking is highly regulated. So you find that when you're in banking, everything you do is checked, periodically and very frequently. And so I came with that discipline into government. And I couldn't change my code. I just had to be my consistent self. And wherever wherever I was taken, I was cleared and I was celebrated because they found out that I was actually doing things the right way. But it's just part of the baptism of fire coming from the private sector. The private sector is very different from the public sector. And my advice to anyone who desires to leave the private sector and go into the public sector is make sure you have your own money. Don't go into public sector thinking that you will make a financial career out of it. That's not what it's about. It's about serving. It's about accepting to carry your cross for your country. It's about taking discomfort with a smile. It's about sacrifice when you work for your government. That is what our president is doing today. That is what our governor is doing today. He's had to sacrifice so much to bring security into Anambra State. You find that one of the most important things about tourism is security.
Right.
Anambra State
well, I mean,
excelled
sorry to interrupt you there,
excellency
Sally, but we've got to move things forward. Beyond corruption, what is it in your assessment that has most held back the growth and development of tourism in Nigeria? Is it a lack of supporting infrastructure, a lack of political will, lack of funding, or all of them sort of put together?
Essentially everything put together. It's a basket full of different things, infrastructure, but also very important is the fact that tourism is a private sector activity, and the private sector has totally refused to get involved in participating in driving tourism. So that's a major backlash, because you find that where the private sector is collaborating with us, the government cannot do it all by itself. And so that is one of the issues that we have, that we don't have a complementary private sector that is working with us and encouraging the work that we're doing and supporting the public sector.
Right. I mean, so given all the challenges that you clearly faced in the Tourism Corporation, I mean, you've talked about people who were, not there to sort of support you, quite a few of them. You've talked about allegations of corruption. You've talked about the challenges of trying to get tourism off the ground. I mean, and I suppose in microcosm, that is the challenge of working for the government in Nigeria. I mean, given all those challenges, would you be interested in going back again to work for the federal government? I mean, you're doing something for the state government now, but would you be interested in returning to the federal level?
I think a call to serve is beyond one's personal needs and personal comfort. And the vision that I believe that the president has for Nigeria is one in which everyone has to put their hands together. When you're called to serve, it is a very serious responsibility. It is a selfless responsibility. It is a responsibility that you have to work really hard. Yes, I would be willing to work with the government to do whatever is required to take Nigeria to the next level. The future of Nigeria is what's really important right now. Whatever has happened in the past is gone. Today we focus on going forward and to be a part of the team that will bring Nigeria where it should be. I mean, there's so many things happening at the moment which we should encourage. You have the government is supporting agriculture. Youth are being included in what is going on. And so many things are happening today. In Anambra State, we've got our second bridge. We have our bridge already been, hello? We have the bridge, our second Niger bridge. We have our roads. The federal government is supporting our roads. So it's important to be part of the decision making in the federal so that the people in the local communities can be empowered. So it's good to be a part of the bigger picture. Because what has happened is that my first time was my introduction into the public service. And then I've gone now to the grassroots. The grassroots, it's very key that you'll be a much more effective at the federal level after your experience of the grassroots, the local community, and that is what the federal government is doing. The president is empowering ministers, he's empowering the local communities. If you empower the local communities, then jobs will be created. Then there'll be less migration to the federal, to the cities. And then the communities are empowered, there'll be jobs in the communities. And so unless you have a good grounding of the grassroots activities, you will not be very effective at the federal level.
Well, I'm just going to interrupt you there, Sally, because we're going to take a break again in a short while. I mean, a lot of people would dispute what you're saying there about the fact that the suggestion that the government is sort of empowering people all over the country. But then that's your opinion and you're perfectly entitled to it. Stay with us, Sally. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead, including as we continue our chat with the former Director General of the Nigerian Tourism and Development Corporation, Dr. Sally Mbanefo. We'll get her take on a lot of other things. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview, where we speak to the newsmakers as well as ordinary people doing extraordinary things around the world and featuring the voices at the heart of the stories. I'm Charles Anya-Golden. Now, the international tourist industry contributes hugely to the global economy. It accounted for 10.4% of the world's economic activity last year, according to the World Travel and Tourism Council. It was responsible for the creation of 20% of the world's new jobs in the past 5 years. But while tourism may benefit the global economy as a whole, in Nigeria it remains an unmanaged industry with very little national and international awareness of the country's huge tourism potential. Well, someone who tried to draw attention to this potential is Dr. Sally Mbanefo, former Director General of the Nigerian Tourism Development Corporation. In addition to her work in that corporation, she tried to bring her considerable family pedigree to bear, and also her work as an internationally recognized artist and sculptor in her own right, as a way of trying to stimulate investment in tourism and culture in Nigeria. All this artwork has been personally created by her, and at least some of them have received critical acclaim and positive reviews. And that's not what we're looking at, that's a picture of her. But we were hoping to look at her artwork, and hopefully we will be doing that in a minute. But Dr. Sally Mbanefo is still with me. She joins me from our Lagos studios. And Sally, thank you very much indeed for persisting with us in spite of all the technical challenges. Of course, your work in art, I suppose, is a way of highlighting, or collaterally highlights, the relationship between culture and tourism, doesn't it?
Yes, it does, absolutely. I mean, art is part of tourism. That is what it's part of tourism. We have incredible art. For example, Anambra, we have one of the best bronze works in Nigeria, even in Africa. We have what you call the roped vase. It's a beautiful vase with a rope around it. It dates back to so many years in history. We have, Benewon, for example, received, one of his paintings was sold for over £1 million about a year ago, and he's from Anambra State. And then you find that poems, you have Chinua Achebe is from Anambra State. So art is really wide. You have visual arts, you have all poetry, one of the most famous poets in Nigeria was Okibo. He died. He fought in the Nigerian Civil War, but he was known for his poetry, which was very poignant and very inspiring. And every year we celebrate him. One of the things that we do in Anambra every year is that we celebrate homecoming. We find that over a large number of Anambra people are outside Nigeria. And so every year we want to encourage them to come to Nigeria, to come to Anambra State, to celebrate all the beautiful things that we have. We have incredible masquerades in Nigeria. We have incredible festivals. You mentioned some before, the New Yam Festival. We have Iruji Festival. We have so many festivals. Just like we have in the various parts of Nigeria, you'll find that Nigeria is endowed with incredible variety and kaleidoscope of beautiful cultural events.
Certainly
the expatriate community works with us.
You seem convinced. You seem convinced that that is the case, but a lot of people, for some reason, are not getting that information. And I'm still wondering why it is that Nigeria has a Tourism Development Corporation and attempts to do all these things, and for some reason it's still not attracting the sort of tourism potential that could make a significant contribution to the country's GDP. And I'm just wondering, you've taken your campaign, because one could actually call it that, your work in tourism, from the federal to the state level. Now, as we said, you head the tourism department in Anambra State. Are things easier to manage and to change, effect change? Is it easier on the state level than on the federal level?
It's really relative. It's the impact that you have. With the federal, you have impact over the whole country. And awareness, that is what it's all about. Creating a paradigm shift for people to understand that tourism is another source of revenue, is a source of IGR for the states, a source of income for the country. People need to be educated. And that was why when I came into the federal level, I went about from state to state, from community to community.
Right, I understand that, Sally, and I don't mean to keep interrupting you, but we've got to keep moving this on. I mean, I do understand that, but in spite of all of that, what I'm trying to get at is that in spite of all your efforts, and I think a lot of people concede that your efforts were considerable, in spite of all those efforts, why do you think there's such little public investment in culture and tourism in Nigeria, when clearly both have the potential to grow Nigeria's GDP and create lots of jobs?
Absolutely. It's lack of awareness. It's lack of awareness. We need to create awareness. We need to work with the media to help us propel and project all these things that we discover. Again, one of the most important things to take note of is the fact that we had an oil boom. People are still chasing after the oil. And so if we can create that paradigm shift for people to realize that oil is there, but tourism is the greatest employer of labor in the world today. Countries like Egypt have about 13% as a contribution of tourism to their global GDP. Cuba, 11%. South Africa, 9.9% is a contribution of tourism to its own country's GDP. You have countries like Mexico, you have countries, so many countries out there. Even Gambia is 17.7% is a contribution of tourism to its GDP. Nigeria is under 5%, and we have much more to offer than any of these countries. It is the delusion that oil is there, and oil is going to be there forever. Tourism can never be depleted. It is there forever, and all our resources are natural. Have you been to the Mambila Plateau?
Right. I understand all that, Sally, and we're sort of, again, I apologize for interrupting you. I do understand all that, and you're absolutely right. I mean, the question, of course, is that, I mean, you say we need to create awareness, but then you were the Director General for 4 years. I mean, I'm wondering what level of awareness you managed to create and why that did not seem to work. And on the other point, of course, that I want to raise is that, you know, part of the problem, I suppose, that you've had to battle, and in fairness to you, you had to deal with that, is the perception, not just with foreigners, but amongst Nigerians themselves, that their country is a difficult, perhaps even dangerous place full of insecurity. I mean, how much did you have to battle that perception and to, you know, as it were, try and convince people, particularly Nigerians, to engage in domestic tourism in this country?
Well, I can speak for Anambra State. Anambra is excellent on security, and that is the basis of anything to do with tourism. Anambra has excelled. Our governor embraced and took the bull by the horns to erase any form of criminality in Anambra State. And so a state like Anambra State is ready and prepared for tourism. There are different parts of the country where we have challenges, and the federal government is tackling them very effectively. They just need time to be able to show the results of what they're doing. Need I say to you that there are people whom, in spite of insecurity in their countries, in any country, would go for tourism. They want to see exciting things that are happening. They want to be in a danger zone. Nigeria is safe. It's relative. You look at Israel with all the bombings that were going on there. Israel is still the best country when it comes to religious tourism. You know, there are many types of tourism. You have cultural tourism. You have sun, sea, and beach, like we have in Lagos State. You have, like you have in Ikogosi Springs in Ekiti. You have nature, you have cultural tourism, you have different types. It depends on what people, they're adventure seekers, people who want to be out there with what is going on. The main problem that we have is that we have to create a paradigm shift. People need to think in a different way. People need to think that tourism is business. It is a business orientation. It's not just relaxation. Nigerians also need to have a culture change. We don't know how to relax. We're always chasing the money. The money has to wait and let us take a breath of fresh air. The beaches are beautiful and safe.
Right.
The grass is green. Everything is beautiful.
Okay, well, I hope people are listening to you, Sally, and thank you very much indeed for your patience and for the fact that you took the time to come and talk to us this evening. Sally Mbanefo, of course, the former Director General of the Nigerian Tourism Development Corporation. Well, that's it for this edition of a very fraught Arise interview. Join us again for a fresh edition tomorrow. From me and the entire team here in Abuja and Lagos, bye-bye, and thank you for watching.